Welcome back to Shone's Thoughts, Afterhours. As you can see in the skyline of the image that we're looking at right now, it's actually my elementary school when I was a child. I'm here back in Surrey now, and I'm just kind of sitting here on a hillside watching so many young people play all different types of sports, from volleyball to tag football, to soccer, to cricket, to just a whole bunch of different sports. And they're all out here and they're all playing and they're all having fun, and it gets me to consider. See, recently I've explained that the stuff that I'm learning about, that I'm researching, you can say, that I'm listening to other people who create podcasts and who present news, that it's almost as if a major shift is happening. And as I look around this sports fields right now, it kind of gets me into thinking of those moments before, what happened in the Terminator movie and what happened in all of the movies which show our past, and everything's going perfect until that moment where everything shifts and it's no longer a conspiracy. It's no longer a possibility. It is that shift into that new reality. And for a long time, I've always wondered about that. I guess, these images also came in games like Fallout. Fallout's a very popular series that depicted the world before a major catastrophe, or The Last of Us. It's almost been a reoccurring theme in a lot of shows to see or present that moment before something happened. And anyways, coming back to it, I was sitting here and I was realizing if what a lot of these people that I watch are true or accurate, more importantly, about what they're saying, what I'm experiencing now is essentially that, sitting in those moments before it became mass consciousness, like added to the collective, that reality was completely shifting. And it hasn't been like there hasn't been this in the past. At one point in time, the British, they were in charge of the world. And we acknowledge that. We acknowledge that they were in control of so many different countries, like politically and financially and militarily. And that came to an end. And we can even go back a little bit further and we can see and acknowledge that the Romans were once in charge of everything. And that came to an end. And so in a sense, what we're witnessing is the end of the American way of life. And what that means is whatever life the average American lived, we're at the end of that. And, if I look at the average, or if I imagine the average at least, I can see a lot of strife. I can see a lot of possibilities to be challenged. And yet, it's enlightening to realize that although all those things are happening right now, there is still so much joy to be experienced. And joy, I feel, is a great addition to adding to the vibrancy or the frequency of community. To raise the vibration of the community is to get out and enjoy oneself in the community with other people. And definitely these people, they're of all shades. And that's amazing and brilliant to see, and that essentially truly reinforces the other audio that perhaps Surrey would prove to be an amazing leader in how the world can unify, essentially, and work together. As I said, this is not necessarily the normal dusk that I would record in, but it's definitely in line with the thoughts, meaning that, I don't know if meaning what. That's amazing. But that's where I was, now that I remember. I was talking about this being those moments before that big shift happens. And I'm sitting here, and if that's true, I'm aware of something that is going to happen right in this moment, right now. And everyone, including all these people that I'm watching, they will be affected by some form or fashion. And I'm honestly hoping for the positive version. I'm hoping that collectively we can change our programming and let go of materialism, the need to have things, the need to own things, and learn to be a lot more sharing, because perhaps there won't be as much things available for everyone. But yet, a lot of the things that we have, if you think about every house having one of everything, that's kind of a lot, especially when a lot of those things you rarely ever use. So we have a lot of excess things, and therefore we need to have bigger houses to carry all those things. You know, it makes sense if your house is in the middle of a large acreage for you to have all those things. But yet, if you live in a community like an apartment building, does everyone really need a saw? Does everyone really need this? Does everyone really need that? And like one of the basic easy things about internet, for example, is in an apartment building, each apartment does not need to be having an internet connection. The amount of Wi-Fi devices and the strength of Wi-Fi abilities, you should be able to have internet for the entire building at the price of what it costs for one person, because the amount of work that sends to get that internet service to that house when they're already into the building, they're already into it, is very minute. And so you could have internet for an entire building, and right there you can save as a community. But other things such as lawnmowers, maybe the community has someone who does all the lawn mowing, and therefore only that person needs the lawnmower. That not everyone needs to have a lawnmower, therefore do they need to have the shack or shed to put it in. There's just so much that I'm hoping that we can perhaps explore. There's a lot of connection, or I'd say programming, for owning something. You know, at one point in time, most of us didn't own very much. We didn't have a lot of owning. And then we essentially got controlled by our owning. The things we own, they control us. And so I truly could imagine, anyways, a world where so I just decided to change the angle of the camera. And I know it's not the perfect angle, like the camera is sideways, but you know, it gets in the most important part, which is the beautiful skyline. And then secondly, a group of men playing volleyball on a basketball diamond. See, I think that that's so awesome, is that we're utilizing the spaces differently. In the past, I don't think anyone could have imagined playing volleyball in a baseball diamond. It's just kind of cool. Things are being considerably done differently, and that's brilliant. But yeah, I definitely would hope that we can all do with less materials, and that we can come together and choose to do things differently. Like, rather than that diamond there was always meant for baseball, well, maybe now, because it has flat ground, yeah, it has the bases you run around, they're still there right now while they're playing volleyball in the diamond. Anyways, yeah, I really do hope that we're able to adapt to those changes of what could happen. Because if that is the case, of what I am researching is the case, major things are going to shift, and it'll move past the point where we could choose not to see it. It's almost like there's a lot of different things happening, and they're happening now, and all of these things that are happening now led to me a long time ago to the person that I am now, to the belief or the understanding of things I have now. And yet, and I can see how those events connect now to what I know, if that makes sense. And yet I can see people accepting what they're able to align to at all of their own different stages. But yet, that was something that was more so perhaps allowed in the past. And yet when we get to a certain point and things shift to the degree that many people would actually prefer right now, at least for their own lives, that's kind of how I feel about a lot of different people that I read their comments about, that they're hoping for a massive, miraculous change in our reality. But yet I've always understood that the challenge with that happening is it would violate other people's journey to wake up. But yet, coming back to what I said, it's about having a major shift. Well, if we have a major shift, well, then it's going to be more of a shocking event to more people all at once. And I kind of get that might be part of their journey, of course. But I'm seeing that as time is slowed down to go through this process, meaning it's taking longer than expected, it's allowing more people to wake up on their own and to get to a position perhaps when they're willing to accept reality. See, and we're at all of a different stage. There are some people who believe in one God, and other people who believe in another God, and then there's people who believe in the government, and there's people who believe in the military, and there's people who believe in the city governments, and they believe in the system, they believe in the money they hold, they believe in the school system, and they just simply believe. And then there's all people who disbelieve any one or all of those. Means that there's so many people that are in belief of that there are aliens, but then don't believe that there are conspiracies. And there's every mixture in between. And that goes to show that there is an awful lot of variance to how you get to a healing solution for the majority. But yet, what I'm understanding, feeling, or seeing to be based on evidence that's in my own life, but also by what's being told to me, is that we're getting to a point where, as I said, it won't be possible for a vast majority of people to ignore it, because that'll be kind of like the tipping point for where society understands things. And there's still going to be people that say absolutely no, like, I'm going to continue living in my fenced off yard, and I'm going to have a store deliver my groceries, and I'm going to pay all my bills by my computer. And, you can vote by a phone. I don't want to participate in that because I don't like technology. There's still going to be people that are like that are holding on. And it's really not, at least in my opinion, that anyone gets forced into acknowledging anything, because that's part of their journey of how fast, how, and when, what they need to know before they're even prepared to face that reality. So I get the reason, but like I said, we're at least from what I'm understanding, we're getting to that point where this is going to be more in the known, by more of the known. Like, we're going to go past that tipping point where the collective perhaps acknowledges a large amount of what's being said in those conspiracy analysts. More of them definitely seem to be coming true every day. And really, truth is only in what people believe. But more people are opening themselves up to possibilities and to listening to certain things and sharing that information. And the more people who share it, the more we become aware of it, the more that we can, just not participate. That's all. Just not participate. Nothing else. Just change the way we do things. So rather than going to the store and getting that white lab coat to tell you how to heal yourself, you can open a book, do some research, think about it, meditate, ask maybe God, why? What can I do? Listen to those instincts. See, I had this own personal experience of mine, and I've talked about it before, but it fits right in here perfectly, with rose hips. See, I was really sick for a long time, and I was always buying teas and making teas. And one day I was encouraged, or I decided to, pick up rose hips. So I purchased them, took them home. They got lost in my cupboard with the other herbal teas that I had. And I never used them. And I had 2 packages of them, I believe, or anyways. But the point being is I didn't use them for such a very long time. And then when I got sick, I just kept going through the sickness. And I kept getting this idea of rose hips in my head. And this certain essential oil was like dead set in my bathroom cupboard. And I ignored both of them. But I remember when I took the rose hips, shortly after, that sickness was gone. But I didn't listen the whole time. Sorry, I'm kind of getting taken by the game and telling the story. But yet I realized after, if I had of, I would have healed it quicker, because after making that cup of tea, I went into my medical medium books and I found that rose hips were perfect for what I was experiencing. And so was that specific essential oil. I forgot which one it was, but it was always in my sight of view for several days while I was sick. And yet if I had have listened to that intuition, perhaps it would have been helped with quicker. So I feel that this will also give us an opportunity to take our own healing back, to start not diagnosing ourselves, but start being aware of the things that we do to ourselves, like the different foods we eat, for example. If that food is causing you to belch, means if you belch after you eat, well, then you don't eat that anymore, because that's your body telling you, oh, well, I don't like that. I don't like something that's in that food. So if we don't want to have to suffer the indigestions, the vomiting, the diarrhea, the hurt stomach, then we stop doing that stuff. I think this is just an idea that's coming through my mind right now. I think the idea that we can eat anything and we just have to put up with the issues with how the body feels. Maybe there's foods that the human does not eat, and maybe they include legumes or cashews or other things that we think that should be okay to eat. Maybe they don't include that. So maybe we do that differently. And that's just an exploration of, if we are sick, that maybe we do things differently and we avoid things that we knowingly that make us not feel well until we're back to a healthier state. Anyways, I'm going to leave this at here. So many different thoughts, but that's kind of what happens. If you have any questions, I'd love to hear them. I'd love to interact. I keep moving forward. And I recognize why. I totally recognize why this whole podcast thing that I'm doing is stressed, and I get it. I get the reasons why. And that's all part of the awakening journey as well, is being able to look in our past and recognize why some of the things that we didn't prefer happened to us, without needing the people or the perpetrators or the villains of the story to hold themselves accountable or anything about that, but for us to learn why these things were necessary to get us to the state that we're in. I often reference, at least my own thoughts, the movie Wicked, where the Wizard of Oz has to create the villain so that he can teach the Munchkins to be more independent. And that's kind of how I see that particular version. It wasn't that in the old Wizard of Oz, it was more about the story of, Dorothy and the Lion and the Scarecrow and the Tin Man. It was their story, which then, it came to be that the Wizard of Oz was the guy behind the curtain causing, but he hires the evil, wicked Witch of the West in order to be that opposition, that trial, that challenge, that to the Munchkins. Because the Munchkins prior to that, at least how it's depicted in Wicked, they were subservient, they were fearful, they were, half of who they could be. But yet, at the end of the thing, they get all jovial and they come out of their shells, and it's idea they're basically saying is, look, you need to have a villain. If you don't have a villain, then you're not going to grow as strong. And anyways, I thought that was a really interesting movie. I don't know if I made any sense in what I was talking about. I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to hope that you have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And yeah, go over and share your attention with my moving portraits. The 2 that I just did recently. And what the heck, when I post this, that's going to be the 2 videos at the end of this video. Is the 2 moving portraits picture videos, experiences that I recently did, because I think that they're both in their own rights deserving of a lot of attention, especially if you have them on a phone or an iPad and you can turn the screen sideways so it fills the full screen and you have headphones. That's the way to experience those things. They're like little 1-minute experiences with audio, and it's a technique that I'm working at creating but also mastering to be very effective, taking modern music and balancing it with imagery which moves. And that the idea of it being a portrait is simply because it's a 9 by 16 frame of nature. It's the portrait of nature is in different ways. So anyways, go and see one of those 2. And as I said, if you have any questions or comments, leave them where they're supposed to go. And if you have any projections, if they're low vibration, send them in a different direction. That would be greatly appreciated. If you have any positive thoughts and intentions and projections, I don't know. Anyways, send all the positivity to everyone around you, and then let it ripple through everyone else. Just as I know I do when I sit here looking at all of this beauty, recognizing the beauty in everything that I'm seeing, and noticing all of the small bits of additional beauty, and how if I look at the world from a larger perspective, we could be able to, based on what I see, live in harmony no matter where our culture's from, no matter what we're doing, no matter the gender, no matter the language spoken. There's people with different languages here, and they're all working together in a sense to fill this park with, a lot of great, joyful moments. So anyways, thank you so much for sharing that time. Go watch one of those videos and let me know what you think.